So let's take a look at the Chiefs' first team offense in the Week 2 preseason game at Seattle. So in this game, the important offensive starters that were not playing, Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce, were given the night off, as was right tackle Jawaan Taylor. I would imagine the Jawaan Taylor part is at least somewhat due to load management with him, because he's clearly been dealing with some kind of injury to his knee. The reports were that he was playing with it last season. He got surgery this offseason, and that he's not still quite 100%. And that's why Jalen Moore has been rotating in so much at right tackle. So they gave Jalen Moore the start this week, and Jawaan Taylor was out. Everybody else played at least a little bit in this game. And we're going to take a look at the first drive, which had the entire first offensive line minus Jawaan Taylor, with Jalen Moore at right tackle. So this is their first play, starting at the 20-yard line. The Chiefs come out in 11 personnel. There's one running back, Isaiah Pacheco, one tight end, Noah Gray, and the three wide receivers are Rashee Rice, Juju Smith-Schuster, and then Xavier Worthy lined up outright. Let's take a look at this play, and then we'll break it down. We've got the Chiefs in the shotgun. Minshew takes the snap and drops back. Doesn't see anything he likes, and so he comes up and slides after getting about 5 yards on a scramble. Of note, the Chiefs had actually tried to run a play before this, and it was a false start by Trey Smith. So it looked like they were trying to do some kind of wide receiver screen to Rashee Rice. But so this was a 1st and 15 play. And so what the Chiefs are trying to do here is they're running kind of a flood concept against a zone where they're going to get Xavier Worthy running a deep route. They're going to have Juju in an intermediate level, and then Rashee Rice coming in on a short route. And so the main idea is this: against the team playing zone, you get the corner dropping back with the deep route. And so then with Juju and Rice, you can take the defender that is responsible underneath here and kind of put them in conflict. Make them have to decide whether they're going to drop back or whether they're going to take the shallow route. Andy likes these flood concepts a lot. The problem being that a lot of times now when teams aren't playing pure zone coverage, they're playing more man match. They're able to increase their numbers over in the area where you're running the flood concept, so it's a lot harder to high-low single defenders out there. Instead of two people being out there, you might have a third, and that's actually exactly what happened on this play, is that the Seahawks ran a blitz, but it wasn't actually a blitz. It was a simulated pressure because they sent one from here and dropped the defensive end, so they're still rushing 4. And the defensive end actually became an extra shallow defender against the flood concept, so instead of having this person in conflict, having to decide about Juju intermediate or Rashee Rice short, we have an added defender with the defensive end dropping. So they've got 3 over 3, and you don't really have any advantage with the flood anymore. So Minshew looks over there to the right initially, then sees 3 on 3, doesn't like it, even though I would argue that initially Rashee Rice, he has won this, and you'd be getting a modest gain out of it, but especially with the defender lurking over the top. But there is an option to throw the ball there. He then turns back left, doesn't have anything. The line kind of clears out. Humphrey and Kingsley with a double team on the defensive tackle cleared this nice alley. They actually give him a pretty decent pocket. So Minshew just ends up stepping up and running for 5 yards. So we'll see this from the end zone view. And again, what the Seahawks are doing here, they've got 4 down, but they end up blitzing from here and dropping. And the way that the Chiefs end up covering this is Simmons blocks the end, Pacheco comes in blitz pickup, Kingsley and Creed double team here, Trey Smith is one-on-one here, and Jalen Moore has no one to block because his guy ended up dropping off. So, as you see here, great blitz pickup by Pacheco. hits him square on, doesn't let the blitzer, dies a slow death there, maintaining the integrity of the pocket enough with Minshew shifting over. Josh Simmons does a good job getting over there toward the end. This is a critique that I first saw from Mitchell Schwartz. He was saying one of the things about Joshua Simmons is that he doesn't kind of move into the body of the rusher. So a couple people have said this next thing that I think I remember Matthew Lane from Kansas City Sports Network saying that Joshua Simmons, he's very athletic, and one of the things he does is he kind of reacts to what the defender is doing. He doesn't really strike first. So if you notice, he kind of comes back in his set and is waiting to read and react. But what Mitchell Schwartz's point was is he kind of takes his hands to the outside and uses this technique pretty often, and it's always kind of on the borderline of something that might draw a holding penalty. I mean, this one, really the optics on that one don't look great. It doesn't really look like his hands are in the frame. This is the kind of thing that you've seen called holding before. So that's one thing to watch with Simmons, is whether he's able to vary his technique, A, by just getting into the defender a little earlier, and B, by getting into his body rather than kind of using his hands to the outside. He does a good job of controlling defenders, but you do wonder whether this kind of thing is going to get flagged at an inopportune time for the Chiefs. For Kingsley here, the way that they've got it, if you notice in pass protection, and as you know, Kingsley in pass protection was a topic of conversation in this game, and we'll certainly get into it in this film review. But one way that they protect him a lot is they have Creed sliding over to him, and the two of them do a good job on this play, and Minshew's able to slide over. Trey Smith and Jalen Moore are 2-on-1 here because the end drops. So all in all, a good job by the line maintaining the pocket for Minshew and kind of clearing out a nice space for him so that when he doesn't like what he sees, he's able to bail and get a first down. So a nice rep from the offensive line. Josh Simmons' technique remains to be seen, and we will have a lot to say about Kingsley going forward in this film review. All right, so our next snap here is about 2nd and 10 now, after that 5-yard gain on 1st and 15. Chiefs are in shotgun, and this time they come out in 12 personnel. They've got one running back, Isaiah Pacheco. The two tight ends are Noah Gray and then Jared Wiley. The wide receivers are Xavier Worthy and Rashee Rice. So let's take a look at this play real quick, and then we'll break it down. We've got shotgun with the two tight ends to the left, and we've got Isaiah Pacheco over to the left as well. Minshew takes the snap, fakes a handoff, and drops back. As he rolls right, he throws to Jared Wiley coming across the formation for a gain of about 5 or 6. So let's break this play down and see what happened. So the route combination here, again, we've got Worthy clearing out, and Rashee Rice's route is a little tough to tell because he kind of gets... he and Witherspoon get kind of tangled up at the stem of the route, but what it looks like is he's trying to drive in and then break this route out. It's just that Witherspoon sits on the outside of the route. We can look at it real quick. So if you watch the progression here, he's coming, and it looks like his goal right here is to break this to the sideline. But Witherspoon's right there with him and kind of gets in the way and makes this kind of a muddy route for Rice, who then ultimately tries to break it out late. On the other side, and then I should mention Pacheco coming out into the flat on that side. So that's what's happening from the right side here. We've got deep, we've got like pushing this in and then trying to break out at the sticks. We've got Pacheco swinging out to the flat. And then Jared Wiley comes and is running a dig across, and then Noah Gray leaks out very late into the flat, kind of mirroring Pacheco. And so the Seahawks here are in man coverage. So Worthy's able to occupy his man and keep the safety deep. Rice isn't able to beat Witherspoon's coverage here, but look at Wiley. I feel like this is prognostically really good on this dig route here. Look at the separation he's able to gain right there on that dig. Cuts it sharply. He's actually running right at the sticks. And look at that separation he created. A nice window for Minshew to be able to throw to. If he can run routes like that against linebackers and safeties, that will be huge for his ability to make it onto the field. You know, he's somebody that was pretty interesting coming out of the draft last year, and then he got hurt. And so it's unclear what the Chiefs are going to get from him, especially with the tight end room looking pretty good with Kelce and Gray, and then Robert Tonyan looking pretty good in the preseason so far. So it's nice to see Wiley flashing as well. Also notable that Wiley's out here playing with the ones and Tonyan was not. The other thing I really liked about this, I mean, look at all this. Look at the separation he has at this point when Minshew is deciding to throw. And that's really great. And the other thing I think he did a really good job of, even coming horizontally on a route, is look at him bend back toward the ball. I mean, he didn't have to because he was so wide open, but this is great practice, right? To come back toward the ball to prevent a defender from undercutting you if they're trailing. So all in all, I feel like this was a very promising play from Wiley with the way that he was able to create separation and the way that he ran that route in a quarterback-friendly way, coming back to the ball to make sure that he would be the guy that could make this catch and making it a third and manageable. So now from the end zone view, let's look at what happened on this one. I think first of all, Noah Gray is in to chip. And I think one thing that Joshua Simmons has shown a good tendency of doing is understanding that, okay, I've got chip help on the outside, so I don't need to cheat too far to the outside. In fact, that'll mess with the chip. And what happens when you chip somebody from the outside? They tend to bounce in. So watch Joshua Simmons at the beginning of this rep. He's covering more inside because he knows he's got help outside. I don't need to worry so hard about being beat outside. So initially he looks kind of out of position. But then, boom, he gets the chip. Unfortunately, this is a tough one because the defender just gets kind of rocketed right back into him. And again, we see Simmons with those hands outside, which is worry. I'm just worried about how refs are going to call that, you know? Like, I know as a Chiefs fan, if I was watching an opposing offensive lineman doing this to our defensive end, I'd be a little unhappy about it. Now, it is one thing when you've got your kind of back turned to the offensive lineman. It makes it a little difficult, like, to understand, you know, where are we talking hands being outside. But again, you know, the technique he uses is he keeps his cans really wide, and I do wonder if there are going to be times when defenders, as long as they're not like trying to pull a rip move, in which case you can almost clothesline a guy and not be flagged in the NFL. But if we have a lot of this, I just wonder how many flags are going to be thrown by these officials standing back. To make matters worse for Simmons in this case, he kind of bumps into Kingsley's defender as Kingsley's blocking over here, and he ends up falling. But all in all, it's still a good enough rep, right? His guy didn't get to the quarterback. He stays inside, allows the chip to happen. He manages a chip when he gets a guy bounced right back into him, and then unfortunately goes right into a defender and takes a seat. But then, like, looking over and seeing how Kingsley performed here. Kingsley, and this was a rep where he had a little help from Creed to start. Dying a slow death, right? You know, it's not I think Kingsley has a lot of strength, but he does seem a little, and I'm not the first person to make this point, but it does seem like his balance is not ideal. For a guy as athletic as he is, it is hard for him to kind of maintain his base, it seems like. I mean, he did well enough on this play. You got to give him credit. Like, it was laborious, but he made it happen. You know, he kept Minshew clean. And then Creed just continues to be excellent. Like, the way that he's able to initially give some help to Kingsley, redirect his man wide, and then to stay available as Simmons runs into Kingsley's man, and then his defender comes back around. Creed is right there. Trey Smith does a good job right here, staying between his man and the quarterback, and Jalen Moore with a good rep as well. So all in all, like, it wasn't the prettiest from especially the left side, but they made it work and kept Minshew clean long enough for him to. He's waiting here for this. You see Wiley's feet. Wiley clear of the underneath hook defender in the robber, kind of in the cover one. Gets his window to throw. Wiley comes back to the ball. I like it. It's definitely encouraging from Wiley, and we'll see if he can show up like that on tape, getting that kind of separation. That is exciting. On their first third down in the preseason Week 2 contest at Seattle, the Chiefs ran a play concept that was a nice wrinkle on something that they do a lot and is really popular across the NFL. So let's take a look at it. The Chiefs come out here lined up in 11 personnel. They've got one running back, Isaiah Pacheco, and their tight end is out here on the right. That's Noah Gray. The wide receivers lined up here. This looks like Xavier Worthy, Jalen Royals, and Juju Smith-Schuster. So let's take a look at the play, and then we'll break it down. We've got Minshew in shotgun. He's got 3 wide to the left, and the tight end is over to the right. Juju then motions over to the right to make it a 2x2 set. Minshew takes the snap and swings a quick one out to Isaiah Pacheco, who runs down the field for a huge gain, getting a first down on 3rd and about 5. So what is this play concept, and how is it a wrinkle on what we're used to teams seeing? So against man coverage, and some teams run this even against zone, but the Chiefs especially have been very selective about using it against man, and it's really designed as a man-beating coverage, or a man-beating play. Lots of teams run mesh, which I'm sure many people understand the basic concept of mesh is you have crossing routes across the middle. One person oftentimes is supposed to set a pick for another. So the idea is that you have a man running with each of these guys, one man running with this person, one man running for this person, and you might even have a robber in the middle of the field. So hopefully with the two of them crossing, one person is looking to kind of rub, or defenders would say pick, the other guy's man, so that hopefully you can have somebody running free across the field. So lots of variations of mesh that teams like to run, one of which is mesh with a sit route. And so that would be kind of having crossers come across, and then your third guy comes and sits underneath. And so you can read the mesh, and some will teach to read the sit route deep first and then come down to the mesh, or maybe you look at the mesh first and then come to your sit route over the top. So another wrinkle off of this is what they call mesh rail. And so, mesh, you can have like multiple things with the mesh route. It doesn't have to be a sit route. The Chiefs have had other variations. Like they used to have Tyreek Hill run a deep over with mesh. So they would have like this mesh concept, and the other guy would be, Tyreek Hill would be lined up here, actually inside of the mesh concept. So when Juju was back here, what they used to do with Tyreek is they would have mesh here and Tyreek run a deep over across the field. So they actually read the deep over first and then come back down to the mesh. Anyway, the mesh sit is one of the variations, and that I brought it up first because that's what Juju is doing on this play. He's coming and sitting. So they have, this mesh concept and then a sit route over the top. Well, then you have a variation called mesh rail, in which you run mesh, but the nice thing about creating this conflict here and a lot of traffic in the middle to try to make it hard for defenders to run across, oftentimes there's a linebacker in the middle of the field who's responsible for the running back. So as you're creating traffic, you've got the mesh route and you've got the sit route coming across. You then send the running back out on a rail route. Idea being that it takes a minute for his defender to get out there, and that he can pop right open. If your receivers on this side are coming in this direction, their men are looking inside, so they're not covering the sideline. This guy's trying to get to the sideline, and your rail route can pop open. And so this becomes the first read on a mesh rail. And so the Chiefs are doing a variation of a mesh rail. They're not actually running mesh after all that discussion. They're running pivot routes or whip routes. So I guess people are calling this pivot rail. So it's a variation on that popular mesh rail concept where normally they have the routes coming like this. Well, instead they have pivot routes coming like this, and they've got Pacheco coming out on the rail. And as you can see, Minshew looks over to Pacheco first. That's his first read right there, and you can see why he pops open. We've got man coverage here on Juju's sit route. We've got man coverage on the whip route, and then the man responsible for Pacheco is starting in the middle of the field. And so he's got to navigate this traffic to get out there, and he doesn't in time, which allows Pacheco to get a nice healthy gain after the catch. And so teams also do the timing of this play differently. The Chiefs on this tend to just get the ball out quickly. They want the ball to the receiver with as much open space, especially a guy that has burst like Pacheco does. And boy, does it look like he's got his burst again. If you see him running down the field, it really looks like he's got some juice that he didn't toward the end of last year. In fact, it really reminds me of what he looked like week 1 and early week 2 before he got injured. In fact, let's take a look at that real quick for comparison. So here we are back in week 1 of 2024. We don't have to break down the entire play because that's not the point here. The point is really comparing Pacheco's movement. So if we look at this play, it's not like the mesh rail or the pivot rail we were just talking about. This is more of a kind of deep concept with Pacheco leaking out late. Mahomes finds him on a dump off. But look at Pacheco here on this play. So Mahomes drops the ball, dumps it off to him. He's got to make a man miss and get as much as he can. And just look at the burst that he had. Like this, we didn't see as much later in the year when he came back from injury. He got hurt in week 2. And so seeing that, it really, this mesh rail play that we just broke down really reminds me of Pacheco back then. And man, if Pacheco has the kind of juice that he was displaying before he got injured in week 2 of last year, that'll be a huge boost to the explosiveness prospects that the offense has, because as we know, the offense really struggled with explosive plays last year. It would be nice to have the ability to have some of that coming from the running back position this year. But anyway, back to 2025. It really does look like seeing Pacheco make this catch. I mean, I really like the way he's moving, how quickly he's covering ground. We know he kind of runs angrily, as Louis Riddick says he runs typewriter feet, I think is the way he puts it. People say he runs like he's angry at the ground, but it's nice to see that he's covering a lot of ground as well again, and I hope that that's what it looks like as we go through this season. All right, and then there's not as much to look at from the offensive line perspective on this play, just given how quickly the ball came out. But you see Juju run in motion. You see quick sets from the offensive line. Again, not asked to do anything too complicated. Hold up for just a quick drop back. I don't know that there's a ton of note there. I mean, Jalen Moore got moved back, but again, there's not much, we're not, it doesn't look like he was going to be able to re-anchor here, and so had the rail not been open, this might have been problematic, but it was a quick play, not much asked of from the line, and a nice play with that kind of pivot wrinkle on the mesh rail concept. Now we'll take a look at the ensuing first down play. The Chiefs come out in 11 personnel. They've got Carson Steele at running back. Pacheco's night is done after that reception. Jared Wiley is their one tight end. So that gets you 11 personnel with one running back and one tight end. This looks like Juju Smith-Schuster down here. This is Jalen Royals over here. And up top, who is that? Oh, that's Tyquan Thornton up there. So we've got Juju down here, Jared Wiley, Jalen Royals, and then Tyquan Thornton up here. So let's take a look at the play real quick, and then we'll break it down. Got Minshew in the shotgun, takes a snap, hands it off to Carson Steele, who's met pretty much right at the line for a minimal gain. So let's take a look at what's going on. There's actually quite a bit happening on this play here. First of all, if you notice down here at this part of the screen, there is a bubble screen action here. So this is set up like an RPO. So you see Royals coming out, looking back, and you've got Wiley and Juju up there as blockers. And they actually have numbers on this. They have got 2 blockers for 2 defenders. So if they had kind of decided on this, this is doable here. They have favorable numbers to run the pass concept. However, it doesn't look like Minshew was even reading it whatsoever, right? He's reading this defensive end on the right side, on his right, like a zone read run play, right? So he's reading the end to decide whether I hand it or keep it to run. I don't know if maybe pre-snap he decided he wasn't going here for some reason based on the look that he was given, but it does not look like during the play Minshew is even considering the pass option. So it's almost like a triple option play, right? There are 3 things Minshew theoretically could do. He could throw this here, he could hand it off to Carson Steele, or he could hold this and run himself. But like I said, it seems like he's only considering the latter 2 options on this play. I'm not sure why. Maybe something happened pre-snap that he didn't like, that he wasn't even going to consider this part of the play. The weird thing, though, is that if you, based on what happens on this play, like if you're going to read this as a zone read, right, then you're reading the unblocked defender, which is the defensive end right here. And if this defensive end crashes down, the read is that actually Minshew keeps this and runs. If he stays put, then you hand this off. But as you can see, the defensive end is clearly crashing down. So you'd think the correct thing to do in this situation is for Minshew to actually hold on to this ball and run. The only reason I could see maybe he didn't do that is because it's the preseason, and it was just like, we're not going to have the quarterback run and take an unnecessary hit in the preseason. But from my eyes, like, you see him crashing down. Like, the right move based on the read is to run this ball for Minshew, not to hand it off. But he ended up handing this off to Carson Steele. And part of the reason Carson Steele had a minimal gain is because the end was crashing, and part of it was that Josh Simmons had a rough rep. For all the good things we've said about him and we've noticed, there are going to be some bad ones too. He's a rookie, and every lineman loses sometimes. But in this case, he gets beaten to the inside, and his man is absolutely ready to meet Carson Steele right as this run is getting going. So he gets sandwiched between Simmons' guy and the end crashing down. Gets a minimal gain maybe of, let's call it 2 maybe? Yeah, maybe 2 yards. Good job falling forward. So from this side, we can see, like, if you look at Minshew, like, doesn't seem to be paying any attention to the numbers over there. So for whatever reason, this was not going to happen as far as the pass option. Now, if you look at him, look at his eyes. He is reading that defensive end, which is what you're supposed to do. He's the unblocked guy. And if he looks like he's coming that way, you keep the ball and go. If he is hanging out here, hand this off going in that direction. Well, he's coming that way, but Minshew hands it off anyway. And as you can see, I think the hesitation here was just in case Minshew did keep it, but he didn't. But if you look at it, the way, if Minshew had kept it, like, he's out of position. He's going to outrun the defensive end. The safety is the only one with a hope of catching him at that point. And let's look at Simmons over here. Goes out to meet the edge, but definitely gives up the inside shoulder fairly quickly here. But again, you see what people have been talking about. This is his move. He gets his hands outside and kind of that's where he tries to control the defender from. And to his credit, he's played something close to 20 snaps in the preseason and has not had a holding call yet. So we'll see if he kind of continues to vary his technique and attack defensive linemen a little bit more. Although his pass pro in general, his style seems to be working. But in this case, lost there, and the Chiefs get a minimal gain on a run play. All right, so now we have a second and about 8-ish. And the Chiefs come out here in 11 personnel again, running a lot of 11 personnel in the preseason, which is interesting because it feels like teams are trending towards slightly heavier formations offensively throughout the league. And we're seeing a lot of 11 from the Chiefs this preseason, although it is just the preseason, so we'll see. Their running back here, Carson Steele. Tight end here is Noah Gray. That one running back, one tight end gets you 11 personnel. And we've got 3 wide receivers. This looks like Jalen Royals down here, Juju Smith-Schuster up here, and Tyquan Thornton at the very top. Take a look at this play and we'll break it down. We've got Minshew out of the shotgun. Gray comes in motion, comes back, sets tight. Handoff from Minshew. Carson Steele met pretty quickly, but is able to push forward with Trey Smith's help. Gain about 5 yards. So let's go back and take a look at this. This one also kinda looks like it could be an RPO. I would guess it's probably not, because this would not be the most creative route combination for an RPO. Juju comes up and he does turn and make himself available, kind of boxing out the defender. Thornton ends up getting pushed to the ground, but the thing about an RPO is you need something that comes open quickly, right? Because the offensive line is blocking as if it's a run, and you're going to have ineligible men downfield if you're holding the ball too long as the quarterback. So when you run an RPO, you're expecting to see a pass concept that allows you to get the ball now. So maybe, but this would not be Andy's most creative RPO. My guess is this is just a run play that is kind of made to look a little like an RPO to keep the defense honest, but I think this is a run 100% of the time. And basically what the Chiefs are doing, they are blocking down these 3, and Trey is pulling to the hole, really trying to get to this linebacker here, and it's Noah Gray's job to kick out this end. So Simmons and crew are just down blocking the line that way. Gray has got to get in here and kick out the end, and Smith comes through to clear the way for the linebacker. And the kind of reason why this play doesn't pop is because Noah Gray is not able to adequately kick out this defensive end. So as Trey Smith comes in to really lay the wood here and create an opening for Steele, he actually gets impeded by Gray. As you see, he runs into Noah Gray's back, and so is not able to generate the momentum he wants to clear this hole. He ends up making his block, but again, Gray has created the tiniest fissure here. So Steele doesn't have a lot of ways to go, and the linebacker is actually able to get an arm on him as he's trying to get through the hole. You have the other clean linebacker here coming over to help out. And honestly, this is the positive for Steele. When you look at the qualities of the different running backs, Steele's quality is that he will, get hit at the 40 and can continue to drive forward and pick up some yardage. He gets another yard or 2, but ultimately, this is a play that started here at the, looks like the 37, the 42, let's say, or 43. Let's see where the ball snapped. Yeah, at the 43-yard line. So Steele does manage to kind of knife through and get a yard or two, and then just keeps his feet churning and churning, and ultimately falls forward. Looks like he gets maybe inside the 39-yard line. So Trey Smith, of course, was a huge help there. On that note, for just as a discussion about the proposed tush-push ban in the offseason, really, if you're looking to ban the tush-push, then you're looking to ban this too. Trey Smith and then ultimately Noah Gray, like, trying to help move the pile forward. I think that's a part of this that fans aren't really considering. Like, the tush-push ban essentially is saying that you can't push players, offensive players, to move them forward. So this would be another aspect of the game that would go away if the tush-push were to be banned. Not making a judgment on whether it should be or not, just saying that there's more to it than just the Eagles play that they run that would be banned if this ban were to go into effect. All right, so we can see it here from the end zone view. Again, we're kind of blocking down here. Smith is coming through to hit the hole, and ideally Noah Gray kicks out this end to create a nice gap for Smith to run through and then Steele to follow him. But as you see, Gray gets pushed backwards right into Smith, prevents Smith from getting through and clearing that area out. The hole that they're able to create is minimal and good on Steele for pushing through this and ultimately getting some decent yardage. All right, so now we've got another third down for the Chiefs offense. They are coming out here in 11 personnel again. One running back, Carson Steele. Tight end is Noah Gray. And the three wide receivers, this looks like Juju. This is Jalen Royals, and this is Tyquan Thornton. Let's take a look at the play, and then we'll break it down. We've got Minshew in the shotgun. Juju comes across the formation in motion. And we've got 2x2, fakes the handoff and throws a quick slant to Tyquan Thornton. Easily gets the first down, gets down inside the 25-yard line. So, what happened here? We got Juju going in motion, and then ultimately this is an RPO. So, basically you're going to get a flat and a slant. And if you look at this, it looks like Minshew's reading this linebacker. So if this linebacker gets some width and makes this slant difficult, then I think Minshew's going to hand it off. But if you watch the linebacker here, he stays put. Hangs out. So Minshew knows as he stays put that there's going to be a window here for him to throw this. So with the linebacker staying put, he makes the decision to throw this. I think that Thornton does a good job. Look at him on his slant. He does a good job not flattening this too much and running into the linebacker, right? Look at how vertically he takes this slant. Stay up in the hole. Don't run into the defender. And look at the ball placement from Minshew. He keeps it behind him because he wants to make sure, if you lead him here, you might give the linebacker a chance to undercut this. So all in all, a good read. Linebacker stays put. You're going to have a window. Good read from the receiver to make sure that you keep this up the field. Don't make this a harder throw or put the ball in danger by running this flat toward the linebacker. Keep it up the field. And then thirdly, great ball placement from Minshew to make sure I'm throwing this in that hole. Like, yes, it's behind the receiver, but that's where the ball had to be here. If you throw this to lead the receiver, there is a decent chance that this is picked off by an undercutting linebacker. So really just great play all around by the Chiefs. Results in a nice first down, keeps the chains moving, and gets just to the brink of the red zone. So you can see what Minshew's doing. Like, let's watch his helmet, and you can really see where he's looking here. So takes the snap, and look at him stare down that linebacker before he fakes the handoff. So it's in this time right here that he has decided. He's looking there. Look at him. His feet are stuck in the ground. He doesn't get any width at all. Doesn't move in that direction whatsoever. So when you see that, Minshew knows by this time when he moves his gaze. Now he's starting to look over toward Thornton. Now he knows I'm throwing this ball. And the placement, perfect. Perfect. Behind him, make sure there's no chance for the linebacker to mess with it. First down. And as you see, with all RPOs, the line is run blocking. It's a similar idea to the last run play, except that we're not having great kick out here. We're down blocking, and we've got Smith coming across. And this time, Smith would be taking Gray's man that is unblocked on this side. So Gray's going to get upfield and actually block, and Smith's move is not to get upfield and hit a linebacker. He's actually coming to hit that edge. However, pass is thrown. First down, Chiefs. So now the Chiefs have a first down, and they come out in 12 personnel, changing it up a little bit. We've got one running back here, that's Carson Steele. Tight ends are Noah Gray and Jared Wiley. Wide receivers over here are Jalen Royals and Juju Smith-Schuster. So let's take a look at this play, and then we'll break it down. Got Minshew in the shotgun. Juju motions over to the right to make it a 3-by-1 formation. He hands it off to Carson Steele, and Steele falls forward for good yardage on first down. Looks to be a gain of about 6 or so. So let's break down this play because it's pretty interesting. So once Juju motions over, if you notice, this is an RPO. And this is kind of a true version of what we were talking about earlier, the triple option idea, where we kind of had Minshew could like throw, run, or pass, but they were to opposite sides of the field. Sorry, I said throw, run, or pass. Throw, run, or hand off. But the RPO was to his left and his read was to his right. So he wasn't really presented with all three options to read on one play. You know, as we said, at that point, it looked like he had decided he wasn't going to throw the RPO before the snap, and then it was just a zone read. Well, look at it in this situation. So Minshew's taking the snap. We've got Juju having come on in motion, coming out for the bubble screen, and you've got two blockers, his tight ends in front of him. So he's got this pass option. He's got the handoff option to Carson Steele. And then if he wanted to, he could hold this and run. So it's interesting the decisions he has to make here. Really, like, the reason to hold this ball in the first place would be if the defensive end out here was crashing down to add to the numbers. Because if you look right here, especially, like, I like the fact that they have the motion into the bubble screen here, because that really drags out this linebacker here. So you've got 1, 2, 3 out here. That leaves 5 on 5 in the box here. So this is a really favorable situation to run because the defensive end is so far out here. He's got no chance. Now, if the defensive end were to crash down behind this play, then Minshew can hang on to this ball and he can decide if he has an alley to run or if he wants to throw this bubble screen. But in this situation, since the defensive end held it, he hands it off to Carson Steele. This kind of triple option play actually reminds me of a play that the Chiefs ran way back in Super Bowl 58 against the 49ers. Let's take a look at that one. It's a little different, but it gives you the same flavor. All right, so this is from the third quarter of Super Bowl 58 with the Chiefs down 10-3 and having a first down at their own 35-yard line. We don't have to kind of belabor the analysis of this play because this isn't a Super Bowl 58 film review. But if you look at this play, again, Mahomes has some options. Here he's got the handoff option to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. And then as he pulls it, he's got passing option to Noah Gray, and he's got Rashee Rice coming across the middle here. And then additionally, MVS is coming out here. This seems more of like a clear out, though. This doesn't seem like a quick pass option that would be necessary for an RPO. But you see he's got the handoff option. He's got the potential pass. coming over here. And then he's got the run, and he ends up taking the run option and gaining 22 yards. But a similar kind of triple option situation, although this time the pass wasn't the bubble screen that we saw in this preseason game. And the initial read, he holds it because Nick Bosa is crashing hard. So he holds it here and notices he's got a big lane to run, so doesn't dump it off to Noah Gray. Instead, just takes off with it and has a big gain. But getting back to our preseason game, this play here, Minshew reads the end. The end is out wide, so he hands it to Steele. And look at the movement from the offensive line. Look at these four just moving bodies. Like we said, great numbers here. We've got 5-on-5. Joshua Simmons is able to kind of stonewall his edge. And the rest of them are moving people down the field. So Carson Steele gets a healthy gain of, it's like 6 or maybe even 7. You can see it here from the end zone view. So you see Minshew is looking out to the end to read him. It's the first read here. Since the end is not crashing down, you hand this ball off. And it's just too easy here. You know, the play design was nice. They ended up with a hat on a hat for everybody, and look at the line go, just moving bodies. Simmons kind of played this to a duel, but that's good enough in this situation. Everybody else is moving. Simmons' man ends up influencing the play from behind, but Steele again does a great job of falling forward, getting a good gain on first down. So now we have a second and manageable after that first down run by Carson Steele. The Chiefs line up in 12 personnel again. They've got their running back is Elijah Mitchell now. It looks like his first time on the field in this game. The two tight ends are Jared Wiley and Noah Gray. So that gets you 12 personnel, one running back, two tight ends. Sky Moore is making an appearance on the field now, and Tyquan Thornton is the other wide receiver. So we'll take a look at this play, and then we'll break it down. We got Minshew taking the shotgun snap. Drops back to throw, and unable to connect with Jared Wiley over the middle. Tight coverage from Reek Woolen results in an incompletion. So what's happening on this play, you've got a shallow cross from Jared Wiley, and you've got a kind of deeper curl, like a sit route in the middle of the field from Noah Gray. Thornton is running a clear out, and Sky Moore is running an out. And what it looks like is that Minshew is reading Gray first, Gray's route 1, and then coming to the shallow cross 2. So not much point like determining who's open over here, because once he got to number 2, he was confident making that throw. It's one thing you always want to remember when you're looking at film is you want to try your best to understand what the quarterback's progressions are, because if he likes a throw earlier in the progression, it doesn't matter if a receiver that was later in his progression gets open, because he's not looking at them until, he's only going to look at them if his earlier progressions aren't open in his mind. So Minshew takes the snap. He looks to be looking to Gray, and he comes off of Gray and throws this to Wiley. Now, Wiley, has shown to have a pretty good release. He got open very nicely against Nick Emanuari, but it's different coming against Reek Woolen. He actually gets a good release right here, too, and there's kind of a natural rub that happens with the underneath linebacker. And so he gets early separation, but Reek Woolen is long and faster, and so he closes that gap really quickly. Minshew looks like he decides to throw it about here. Like here's where he's made the decision to throw, and Woolen is already kind of closing. So I can understand we'll be able to see in just a minute about where he comes off. It looks like around here is when he turns to look at Wiley instead of Gray. And unfortunately, Gray's about to be right there. It feels like it was the wrong decision to come off of Gray here. If he had hung with Gray for just a second, and it's not like, coming off onto Wiley, maybe it's the earlier trust from hitting him on a crosser earlier in this drive, but though he had early separation, admittedly when Minshew was not looking at him early in this route, by the time he gets over the middle, you've got a faster guy, long defender, known good defensive back closing, and this window ends up being so tight. Minshew actually gets the ball in there. Wiley's not able to get two hands up for it, and so, trying to snag that ball one-handed is a real tall task, and it ends up going incomplete. But let's see in detail more about what I was talking about with the progression. You can see Minshew here takes the snap, and you can see he's looking at Gray as his first option. Now, unless he feels rushed here, I don't really see a reason to come off of Gray. But he does somewhere around here. He's kind of looking at Gray, but this looks like a route that's going to pop open. His defender is staying over the top. He's got depth, and he's still moving in that direction. And that Gray's going to come sit. So he does right here, and he's open. You can see it over here. Gray, if this ball is thrown with anticipation, like right now, when Gray turns his head, boom, he's there. He's got separation. That's an easy first down. So it's unclear to me why Minshew came off of that, because it's not like, Kingsley, maybe he felt that, Kingsley initially saw some pressure from the outside, but Minshew actually ended up having time in the pocket to wait on Gray. But at this point, he comes off of him, and you can see the coverage is already pretty tight when Minshew is deciding to throw right about now. It's not like, Wiley came off, he had a little separation, Woolen closed it, and by this point, this is just a really tight window. It's a good throw, though. Look, he throws it into that window. Wiley's not able to get that right hand up to it, which might have given him a chance to try to make this catch, but it does look like maybe it was a little bit out of his reach, but you're not going to catch this ball going up with one hand. In any case, I do wish, and maybe this is overly nitpicky, someone may correct me here, but it really does feel like if he just hangs on with Gray here, that's a first down throw to Noah Gray, and we wouldn't be in the third down situation that we will come to on the next snap. All right, so now we've got third down play in the red zone, third and about 4-ish. And the Chiefs come out here in 11 personnel. They've got one running back, that's Elijah Mitchell right here. Their one tight end is Robert Tonyan, making his first appearance in the game. The wide receivers are Juju Smith-Schuster, Jalen Royals, and Tyquan Thornton. So let's take a look at what the Chiefs did on this third down, and then we'll break it down. Got Minshew coming in and directing the protections here, and he drops back into the shotgun. He takes a snap, a little bit of pressure from his left side, but he gets a pass over to Juju Smith-Schuster, who's immediately cut down by Kobe Bryant. Great tackle short of the first down marker and bringing up fourth down. Now, it's a shame that this did not result in a first down, because this was Andy being Andy. This was a great play design. Andy does such a good job against man coverage, making defenders run through a lot of muck, and he did the same again. So the idea here is basically a double pick is set for Juju Smith-Schuster coming across the formation. It starts by Tonyan coming up to his man and essentially trying to get his man back to have Reek Woolen have to run over him. Then step 2 is Royals coming in, because this is ultimately a mesh concept. So Royals is coming in, and he's trying to get in the way of Riq Woolen as Juju comes by. Royals does a really good job of doing this and not contacting the defender. So let's watch this. As Juju comes up, look at Tunyon first and look at the timing to make sure that A, he doesn't run into Juju, and look at Juju cut off behind his hip right there, and Tunyon trying to just make this hard on Woolen. So getting up the field, trying to get his guy in the way, and the linebacker is scraping over here over the top as this route is coming out here. So another added level. So that works. Juju already has great separation. Look at that. He's running free. Then the next guy is Jalen Royals. Jalen Royals is coming across, again, getting in Woolen's way, but does a good job of not just picking him off directly. So Juju wide open, completely running free. The only downside is that Kobe Bryant sees it from his deep safety position, and he sees it right here. Look at him put his foot in the ground, and he's like, oh, okay. I see Juju coming across free. And he drives on it very early. Like, Minshew doesn't throw the ball until now. Bryant has already put his foot in the ground and is going. He's got a step before the ball comes out of Minshew's hands. And so once Juju collects it, he doesn't have a chance to turn and get set and avoid this hit. And it's just a great hit from Bryant. Takes his legs out and doesn't give Juju a chance to fall forward for the first down. My one critique, and again, you can tell me if this is valid. The one critique I have of Minshew is that, and maybe it's just not possible because unfortunately Kingsley had a pretty bad rep. We'll get to that in a second. But Kingsley had a pretty bad rep, beat to the outside, and so Minshew kind of was on the move, and his moving away allowed Trey Smith's man to get an angle on him. So he didn't have a ton of time. But in theory, if Minshew is able to hang on to this ball just a little bit longer, which now that I'm watching this, like, this is probably too much to ask of him. But if he had a good pocket, if you hold on to this ball for just a second longer and create a conflict for him, if the safety drives before you throw this, I mean, you can hit Thornton on the post for a touchdown. He's got no help. But unfortunately, now most quarterbacks, I figure, will just throw this ball anyway because, like, they're just trying to get the first down. This is third down. You hope that Juju is just going to make this. It would take a spectacular tackle to stop him, and a spectacular tackle is what we got. Kobe Bryant made the play. But it is too bad that if he has a clean pocket and can survey, you know, there's no rush to make this throw, and that, like, he's running free of his defender. The only guy that could possibly ruin this for you is this guy. If you're able to look him off, you know, keep your eyes downfield to hold him back here, then Juju's wide open. Or if he drives on this like he did and you're able to hold it, you get the wide open post for a touchdown. But, you know, it was just played perfectly by the Seahawks, and I think it would be too harsh to criticize Minshew for this one because he's on the run. His, window is closing. He's just got to get rid of this ball. He doesn't really have the opportunity to work through and think through what I was describing with putting the safety in conflict. Unfortunately, Chiefs aren't able to convert the first down. But what an awesome play and well executed by the Chiefs pass catchers. So you see on this one, again, Simmons, again, using that kind of outside technique where I don't know why it worries me so much that he's going to be, because he's kind of bear hugging guys a little bit, and I wonder how that is going to be called. He wasn't called in this game, so I don't know. But Kingsley, this is where things are tough for him, right? The Chiefs have been sliding Creed over to help him, and I imagine they're going to be doing that for most of the year. This is a way that, you can help out a guard that is struggling in pass protection more than you can a tackle. At least more than the Chiefs would a tackle. But Kingsley's real issue has been that he gets struggles moving laterally, even though he is a pretty athletic guy. And that was a bigger problem at tackle. Fortunately, it's going to be less of a problem at guard because he's moving in smaller spaces against less agile guys. But every once in a while, you get beat to the outside, and that's what happened there. Not a good rep from Kingsley. Simmons really, he moves so well. Like, you just watch his feet and the way he's able to stay in front of people. The only worry I have with him is that I just hope this technique he uses doesn't draw the ire of the officiating. But you do wonder if, Kingsley's movement here, and honestly, I didn't realize it initially. Kingsley's pressure that he allowed and then Minshew's movement, I mentioned that it allowed 94 to kind of have a free run at him, but also this is a little bit of a late stunt because you see the defensive end does kind of spike Trey Smith and the tackle's looping around, but it is too bad that if he had a clean pocket, Thornton, there's no safety in the middle of the field. Like, if Thornton is able to, this is just an easy touchdown if he's able to hold that ball and the safety still commits. Now, maybe if he holds it, the safety doesn't commit, but then a later throw gets a first down here. Again, not Minshew's fault. Nothing he could do really with that pressure, and unfortunately, you got to tip your cap. Great play by the deep safety, Kobe Bryant there. So now the Chiefs decide to go for it on 4th and short. And they come out here in 22 personnel. That's 2 running backs, Elijah Mitchell, Carson Steele, 2 tight ends, Noah Gray, Jared Wiley, and their lone wide receiver is Sky Moore. So let's take a look at their 4th down play. We'll break it down. When you see this alignment, did anyone have any doubt that in the preseason this would be a fullback dive? The Chiefs loved the fullback dive a couple years ago, then they tried to run some wrinkles off of it. It only makes sense that they would run this play in the preseason, when they're testing it out and putting stuff on film. Carson Steele tries to get over the right side, ultimately does not get the first down, and the Chiefs turn the ball over on downs. Looking at it, the Chiefs kind of really did, the line did their job. Wiley did a good job of getting everybody down. There are 2 things that don't make sense to me on this play, and let's look at it from the end zone view to really see it more clearly. Look at the way that this space was cleared here. Wiley, Smith, they really did a great job of moving everybody over. If you'll notice, the line is unbalanced here, right? So they took Jalen Moore and they moved him over to the left side. So this is still fine as long as you follow the rules of alignment. If you look back here, the way that they've lined up, they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 offensive linemen, ineligible receivers. They all need to be covered. So Sky Moore covers Jalen Moore. Jared Wiley covers Trey Smith. And Jared Wiley is not covered. You see Noah Gray that's not Noah Gray. That's Robert Tonyan. I called him Noah Gray earlier. Robert Tonyan is set off. So even though the center is here and has 3 offensive linemen to the left and only 1 to the right, this is still a legal formation because they have the 5 ineligibles. They're covered, and the eligible receiver here, Jared Wiley, is not covered. So you can move them around if you want to, and they did here. So their lineup unbalanced to this side. I wonder if part of it is to threaten this pitch to Mitchell. They did get the linebacker to move over there, but look at the blocking to the right side did what they're supposed to do. Now, the 2 things that I don't understand. One is maybe it's just because he was right on the line, but Tonyan was a little late at getting the inside guy here. When you're down blocking everybody and trying to get somebody over here, they're both worrisome, and I understand, this backer 52 is right on the line, so Tonyan gets to him first, but he's not able to get the second guy as much as you'd like. And the second guy is the guy, it's just like, talk about getting the inside guy. When you have two blitzers and you're a lineman, you're trying to get the inside guy who has the shortest path, especially when his path is in this direction. So, like, obviously getting a hand on him while this guy's coming in is important, but you'd hope to get over to the inside guy enough he's the priority guy to really impede. The other part I don't understand is I don't understand why Carson Steele, if you're going to leave your feet, like we just talked about earlier, how he's good at driving a pile, right? So just put your head down and get right into him if you're going to contact him. But if you're going to leave your feet, it should not be to contact someone, right? You leave your feet to jump over people. If you want to contact people, you want your feet on the ground so you can get leverage and drive into them. So if you're going to go at him, keep your feet down. If you're going to jump that way. Like, jump into the open space over people, not into a defender. So I don't understand, this to me looks like it should have been possible. This should have been converted. I feel like the blocking was good enough if he follows and if he wants to leave his feet to go that way, I feel like that works. Or if he wants to just drive, put his shoulder down, and maybe because Wiley's on the ground, he can't drive, and that's the problem. Well, then if you're going to leave your feet, don't jump into the defender. Like, you don't have your leverage. You're trying to hop over a guy. So if you're going to hop over a guy, you want to continue in this direction where you're unimpeded. And you don't need that much. So I was a little confused by those two aspects of this play. I feel like Tonyan didn't do enough to get to the inside guy quickly enough because he's your real... They're both threats, obviously. You can't just ignore a guy that's on the line of scrimmage. But he's the guy that has the inside track to getting to Steele, and I feel like Tonyan was a little late getting over to him. And then Steele's decision to jump into a defender, I don't really understand. In any case, didn't work out for the Chiefs. They turned it over on downs, and that was it for the starting-ish offense. The starters minus Kelce, Mahomes, and Jawaan Taylor.